Hello and welcome to another video. Today's video we are going to be doing my monthly swap card, and this month's theme was an animal of some sort, and I thought, you know what, I haven't made in a long time are birthday cards, and I thought what better paper to use than this Whale of a Time paper, the DSP, and I thought, hey, these Seaside Notion seahorse matches this little seahorse here, I think exactly, with obviously the direction being the thing. But I was like, well, I don't want to have just one seahorse. I thought, let's have them stamped, colored, and cut out, and then kind of have their little tails intertwined. But in order to do that, as you can tell, there's only one seahorse on here. And so I actually needed to use a technique where I mirrored the image to get this version right here. And I will show you how to do that in this video. So let me show what you need to get started. First things first, you will need a 2.5 inch strip by 5.5, though I just cut this, and it's just still the 6 inches. I'm actually going to cut it once it's flush with my cardstock, so that way I know I'm not accidentally cutting it short. You could definitely cut it ahead of time though to 2.5 by 5.5 if you wanted. I then have a, I have a strip here of Pretty Peacock. It is 2 3/4 by 5.5. I have my card base. This is in Balmy blue. This is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. I have, because I was making many of these, I decided, well, there's an inch left of this cardstock, or this paper. I was like, why waste it? So I cut that inch in half so that I could use this right there on the inside. Notice I did not use a liner. You totally can, especially if you like the crisp, clean look of a liner. But I thought Balmy blue is such a light color that you could write your sentiment and it'd be very visible. So I did not add one for this one, but you definitely could if you wanted. You'll need a few scraps of of Whisper White to do your stamping. I do recommend that you have one scrap that's at least 1.5 inches wide. You could have it a little bit more narrow, but it's on purpose. You want to make sure that seahorse has plenty of space. So do make sure you have a strip that's at least that wide and looks like about 3 inches long. So you could have a strip that's 1.5 by 6 and you'd be able to stamp both your seahorses on there. I'm using the Just Jade and Pretty Peacock blends. And to do this technique, one of the ways you can do that is using our silicone craft sheet. So I recommend having that handy and having it wiped down so that it's not going to get in your way. Let me show you the technique. It's really cool, and if you've never played with this technique before, hopefully it's something that you guys can give it a try. Oh, and then I use the Taylor Tack punch for my sentiment because I heat emboss it. So let's go ahead and get started. You will need, because we are using the blends, you will need Memento black ink, and with that black ink, it's very simple. Okay, the only thing you might do is you might want to practice a few times, just in case you're worried about your stamping. Occasionally, they might get a little bit blurry, but the beauty of you coloring these is that it's not going to be as noticeable. And as you can tell from my sample, I intentionally picked the darker color to be the one that I embossed, or that I colored with the reverse image, just in case it wasn't as clear of a stamp. So I'm going to set it down, and I'm just stamping my silicone craft sheet right there. One thing to note, this is going to want to wiggle. When you push, try to push down and lift back up without wiggling it. So now you take your strip, and here's the tough part too. I just lay it right on top and just brush with my finger. You could even try to keep it one directional, so I'm sort of like lifting my finger up. Do make sure you get all of it though, because on one of them that I had to redo, the little fin didn't transfer very well, so I had to restart. And there you go. Now you can use this one to stamp it on another scrap and color it. So notice here you've got a little residue there. You can just simply take your Stampin' Jammy right here and just wipe it down. And this surface is large enough. I was actually able to stamp down 4 of them because, again, I'm using a strip, which is why it wasn't an issue. I was using the strip. I was able to stamp down 4 of them and then 1 on the side before I had to reposition and like wipe it down. So for mass producing this technique, if you pick a small enough stamp, that's gonna be great. So now I looked through all my scraps to see if I had another one that was 3 inches, and I did not. So I have to use a big piece, and that's okay because they will get used. So now I'm going to stamp a regular sided facing here, one of these guys, and I'm going to stamp it long ways. And there we go. So you can see one of the benefits, I think you can see from it being so close. Let's see. One of the benefits, is it visible? Yeah, you can kind of tell. I'll bring it up closer here. Let me reposition myself. So see here, that's pretty solid and black. And this one is also solid and black, but has a slightly lighter touch. And that's on purpose because we didn't want to accidentally smudge anything. And so we really want to be careful there. So to add a little dimension, we colored them. So I'm going to use, I learned when doing these that really, because you're going to be cutting them out, doesn't matter if you go over the lines. If anything, it looks better because as you cut it, you're going to be fine. So I actually did this. I added my dark first for this one, and I did under the chin and on top of the belly, like where there would be a shadow, the bottom of the belly, bottom of the fin, and then kind of like a line on the tail. And that's what I did for each of them, essentially just with the image flipped. So then, here's the thing though, because I'm coloring it and I'm going to be cutting it out, I intentionally made my coloring go outside of the lines so that even if I accidentally cut or colored like outside the lines, it wouldn't matter because when I cut it out, it's going to cut out essentially, even if it cuts out a little bit of the past the black, it'll still be colored, so it won't look too weird. And that's all I did for my coloring. Like, it already has some shading, and it's really because it has that subtle look. So now I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing here on the belly, the fin, on the tail, and then same thing with my pretty peacock. And again, I'm just making it overlap. I feel like this one I'm using more frequently than the others. I tend to use the light colored more, and so I'm trying to actively use the darker ones more often. I might try to find some ribbons to color or something to try to balance out my use of each color. So then all you need to do is to cut these guys out. It's not particularly difficult, though I do recommend that if you cut it on a strip that you have a good handhold for it so that when you cut it out, it's going to be pretty easy for you to handle the paper. So you've colored them, and then by the power of television, they've been cut out. So now let me show you how to assemble the rest of the card. One of the other tricks, I feel like I've shown you this or something similar before. If you notice, my card, I actually punched this out and heat embossed it first. We're going to do that. And we're going to do it out of this strip because nobody's going to see that it's covered up. Nobody's going to see this missing punch. But we will know we made our paper stretch a little bit further. So that's what we're going to do here. Again, we no longer carry these, but I highly recommend you either make your own or get your hands on one from a craft store, an embossing buddy. It helps make sure that sticky, inky fingers and the oils on your fingers don't transfer to your cardstock. So I'm using the Happy Birthday, again, from the same Seaside Notion stamp set. And I'm just gonna tap, 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 tap. And I intentionally made it right in the middle because I thought even if I really mess up, I'll just flip my paper over. That's not the end of the world. However, if you are going to be mass producing this, you could definitely get, you could probably even punch 2 of these out at once. So here's my white embossing powder. I have them in a box too somewhere. I don't know why I don't use that one more frequently, but I just had a scrap piece of paper. The coffee filter that I usually use, my cats somehow got a hold of it, and I don't know what it is about them. They were fond to destroy that filter. So it's like in tatters, and so I had to throw it away. So just go ahead. It's the same kind of process though, it's just a bit more stiff. There we go. So there's that. And then I just cap that back up. If you want to though, you could definitely get like a resealable container and a little spoon, and I can show you that in another video. So now we need to heat it up. Pardon the loudness. I do recommend you heat it up ahead of time to get it warmed up first. Boop. So again, I prefer to heat it from behind, and so once it's warmed up, we'll do that and punch that out. And you'll want to move it a little bit so that it's not staying on one piece too long. You don't want it to burn. There we go. The magic is happening. There we go. And just like that. So notice, because I was holding my paper a little stiffly there, it bent a little bit as it was warming up. But because, excuse me, because I'm going to be gluing this flat on my cardstock, I'm not too worried. If I was going to be more worried, I probably would have continued heating it a little bit as I flattened it to make it not be as much of an issue. But I'm not worried for this one. If you were using more cutouts from this though, you definitely would want to check that. So notice this stamp fits perfectly in this particular punch, and I love that. This one's one of those where you, if you struggle occasionally for using like a good punch for more masculine cards or for cards, sometimes even for children, some of our punches are not necessarily feminine, but they have a slightly more feminine feel, and so sometimes it's tough to convince yourself to use it for a card that is going towards a male. So in this case, I am putting the glue everywhere save for that little 1/2 inch, and that's because I know that this is cut down to size, but remember I had left this to 6 inches, so I'm going to make a little bit of overlap there. But because I punched out essentially the middle, I'm intentionally not putting glue in the middle. So now, how you want to do this, and you can always make it your own. However, I am intentionally leaving what looks like about 1/8 of an inch on both sides. And there we go. And assuming you did a good job, there'd be no glue there. And it looks like there's just a tinge of glue down here. It's a little heavy-handed, but that's okay. We'll just trim that part away. So now we've got our piece. Notice this piece here will just strip right off, and we're going to do that with our paper snips. Notice the cardstock here is actually going to kind of serve as a place for our blades to rest. So I'm just going to do that, line that up, and cut. If you wanted to, you could have waited until it was lined up with your cardstock. But I'm pretty comfortable with how I stamped, or how I cut it, so I think I'll be okay. So now we'll do the same thing. If you really wanted to, you could add dimensionals on this piece as well. I thought that would make it a little too bulky, so I did not do that. But now, again, and you can use your grid paper here to line it up. And notice I can have almost exactly, there we go, 3/4 of an inch on both sides. And because I'm using the liquid glue, I can kind of wiggle it with some give there. So there we go, we've got that. I popped this up on dimensionals. I then did not adhere it yet because I did the same thing with my seahorses. I put on dimensional on their bellies and I put a mini dimensional on their heads. But I did not adhere my sentiment until after I had placed my seahorses. And that's on purpose because I did not like I did not like having I was worried that if I put this too high, like the seahorses would get crowded and their little interlocking tails wouldn't work. So I thought, no, I need to make sure the seahorses are solid first, then I can add my sentiment and center it as I see fit. So originally I had thought like maybe to try to make them look like a little heart, but I thought that would probably seem a little forced. So I just intentionally made sure that this is kind of centered, but not too much. And let's put them, right about there. Boop, boop. So there we go. And now I take these backings off these other two. And what I did is I intentionally interlocked it first. Then I tried to make this a mirror image, or at least as close as what I could. There we go. Look at that. How cute. And then just take off the backings here. Oh, I had gotten that one. I thought I hadn't. So now notice I've got, it looks like just over 3/4 of an inch. I want to have about the same clearing here. And notice I can just tuck that right underneath. Oh, and see, that's why you just set it down. You don't push it down yet. There we go. A little bit down. And then that way, your seahorses have their little tails interlocked. You've got their faces there. All that's missing is our little strip. And again, you don't have to do this. You could absolutely have used this for a different card, especially if there's some really great scrap cards that you could use this for. But I thought, you know what, the inside of the card, especially since I knew I wasn't going to stamp an inside greeting, because there's a ton of options for kind of a Seaside themed plus an inside birthday card. And I was like, no, let's not force that. So I just did that. Line it up and trim, and now we've got a little innie, little pop of color and tying in the front to the back. If you wanted to, you could have even gotten your stamp and stamped a little seahorse in a corner somewhere if you wanted to tie it in, though you would not want to, even though this is colored cardstock, you would not want to have colored it just in case it bled through. So just be careful there. If you wanted to, say for example, have another one ready to go, you could have definitely done that. But since I'm mass producing this, I did not want it to be in my way. So that said, I am producing this card for my swap this month. I hope you like it. I hope you get a chance to maybe try your own take on it. I suspect that this is not what they were all thinking when they thought that it was going to be an animal card, but there was something about, I saw like the baby set and I was like, or the one called Wildly Happy, and I was like, I love this, but I think the last time we had an animal themed, it was about, I used that set. So I was like, well, I don't really want to do that. Ooh. Well, I'd forgotten about these. That could be fun. Maybe I'll add some gems. I'll have to do some math to make sure I have enough for all of my cards. That could be a fun thing to add to them. Or maybe my epoxy dots. That could be fun. I was just looking at it. I was like, they're beautiful, but I feel like they're missing a little bit of bling. I'll have to see if I can find something I can add to these. But otherwise, I definitely love them as is. As you can tell, definitely simple to make. It does require a few items, but if you've already got, your snips, and if you've already played around with embossing, that's great. If you don't have an embossing tool or you don't want to emboss, you don't have to punch this out. You could have punched this out of white and just stamped it in Pretty Peacock or Just Jade. You could have used the blends marker and kind of blended in the background, kind of a swoosh look. You could have really made it your own without having to heat emboss it. So this is one of those cards where this is a bit more of the casual crafter, where you have a little bit more stuff, but you're not necessarily going to have like every single activity and material that you could take. Like this, I could step up. And then the other thing I wanted to make sure to emphasize is that this beautiful mirror image technique only uses this. And this is usable for a lot of other reasons. Like I use this if I'm gluing something down that I want to make sure it doesn't accidentally get on my project, because any kind of glue is not going to stick to this. Hot glue is not going to work, liquid glue, tape runner type glue, all of it doesn't stick. And so it's really easy to clean and reuse for lots of different projects. So that said, I hope you like my card. If you wish to subscribe so you can see more cards like this in the future and other ideas, feel free to do so. The link is below. If you want to get any of these items, I'll have listed the items below, and on my blog linked there, you'll find a link to all of those items so that you can just easily add them to your cart for your next order if you wish. And other than that, if you've got questions I can answer, I would be happy to do so. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!